Okay, we now welcome on somebody we're really excited to have on today. He's a professional improv comedian, a performance coach, author, former college soccer player. It is Travis Thomas. Thanks for coming on today, Travis, and joining us.
Chuck, Will, man, I love it. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, Travis. So before we get into kind of like more of a conversation, we like to start off with some quick hitting questions, just rapid
Let's
fire.
do it. Yes.
All right. So first one we have, what is your favorite all-time TV show?
Woo, wow. Favorite all-time TV show. Oh man, I think Seinfeld is the first thing that comes to mind, but The Office could be pushing it off the pedestal here.
Big Office guy myself. I know
Yeah,
Travis
I think
too.
that might be mine too. To be honest.
Yeah.
Last vacation that you took?
All right. So national team doesn't count because that's last vacation probably with probably Colorado. Yeah, my wife and I going out to Colorado, seeing some friends and enjoying the state there. So love Colorado.
A lot of time in Colorado between them and the national team.
Yes. Just beautiful. I live in Florida right now. I've been living in Florida kind of since 2000s, and love the beach, love warm weather. But if we left Florida, I could see us being near the mountains for sure.
All right, this is a random one. Hot dogs or hamburgers?
Oh man, I'm a vegetarian now. I've been a vegetarian for 10 years. I grew up in a fast food hamburger restaurant. My dad had fast food hamburger restaurants in Michigan, and I have consumed more red meat and chicken in 30 years of life than you should in a lifetime. So I'm just trying to make up the balance.
Veggie burgers, right?
The Impossible burgers, the Beyond burgers. For a guy that grew up on burgers, man, they're pretty darn close. They're good.
What's your favorite sport to watch outside of soccer?
It's a good one. I love live hockey. I love hockey. I grew up in Michigan, so I'm a big hockey fan. NHL, Red Wings, but I love hockey. Yeah.
Nice. Who's your pick to win the Euros?
All right, I'm gonna go off the board a little bit. I'm gonna go Belgium at this point.
Belgium. I like that.
Belgium. Yeah.
De Bruyne is back. Hazard's back.
I know. We'll see if their defense can hold up, but I'll go Belgium.
They got a tough game though, round of 16. I think they have Portugal now, so that'll be
that's
a good one.
That'll be a fun one. I know I missed all the games today. I know probably when we're recording, this is going to date this a little bit, but I didn't get to see like the Germany, France, Portugal, Hungary games. I was bummed. I got to miss those today.
Yeah, it was good. I was watching. I was working too. If Joanne is listening to this, my boss, I was also working, but I was watching the Germany game, and that was, I mean, they went down, then they tied it up, then they went down again, then they tied it up. Meanwhile, France and Portugal are going back and forth. So it was like a lot of drama. I think who England was going to play in the next round changed like 5 times throughout the game. I think they were going to play against every team in the group at one point.
So who are they? So how did it work out? Who are they going to play?
They play Germany now.
Woo!
So another tough one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what an awesome round of 16 game. That's awesome.
Yeah. That game's kind of like the US Mexico one. It was like a lot of back and forth.
Yeah. Crazy game.
All right. So Travis, you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself? Like so you worked for the US national team. What exactly is your role there?
Yeah, so my role with the U.S. national team my title is leadership and team dynamics, which, I mean, it covers, I'm just another guy on the staff, but that covers things from kind of doing leadership and mental sessions with the players. I'm available for one-on-ones with the players, but I also sit on the technical staff with the coaches, not for my soccer expertise, that's for sure, but just as someone who is there. And just helping with the sort of the overall culture of the team, and we've got very specific values with the team, and making sure that how we do anything is how we do everything. And so Greg Berhalter brought me in, and just wanted someone who could, everyone kind of has their role on the staff, from the technical staff to our trainers to our medical staff to our comms to equipment. Everyone has their role, and he wanted to bring in someone with my background who could just really focus very intentionally on the culture of the team, and the behaviors and the values. And so So that kind of shows up in lots of little different ways, but also kind of tapping into my experience as a performance coach and addressing sort of the leadership and the mental and the team dynamics as well.
Yeah, a lot of guys we have on, like Sebastian, we were talking about, Paul, Areola, they talk about the culture and everybody's like really buying into that.
Yeah.
What would you describe like the culture is like?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think a good way to describe it would be, brotherhood. There's always been a focus with the national team on this idea of brotherhood, but how do we create that? And then how do we, we get great feedback from the players that whenever they're in camp, they genuinely feel the care and the love of everybody on the staff, and it's genuine. And you look at everyone in that camp and on that staff, they are there because they want to see these guys be successful. Obviously, we want to be successful as a national team, but they want to see, we're genuinely interested in these guys being successful beyond the national team and with their club teams as well. And so you see this real concerted effort to set egos aside and for us to really be there to support these guys and just to help them in every way possible. And so I think when guys come into that national team environment, they really, I think they feel that love and they feel that care of a staff that genuinely is there to serve them and really care for them. And so I think that's a good way sort of describing it.
So you mentioned that you try to foster good leadership and a good team dynamic. Do you feel like that is kind of tough considering everybody is so young within this squad? And kind of a two-parter, we have seen like different captains throughout, like speaking of Nations League, Zach Steffen was captain for one game, Pulisic was captain the other game. Kind of like, what is the leadership dynamic like within that squad, and who do you see as the main leader or leaders within that group?
Yeah, and I think it's not just unique to the U.S., but when you look at national teams in general, you've got you have players who are available for camps and players who aren't available for camps, and so for the last few years, as a national team, we've brought in a lot of different players. We've got a chance to look at a lot of different players, but then you're also limited to to having camps where you've got guys who are playing in Europe or guys who are playing in the US, and based on their club situation, they're not available to come in for camps. One of the things that Greg has done, Sports Illustrated actually wrote a great article about it in depth, is that he created a leadership council. And so players voted on different guys. And so every time we come into camp, we have a group of players who kind of operate as a leadership council. And so this is a group of leaders that we can go to as a coaching staff, that Greg can go to. He can get feedback from them. He can get their opinions. He can vet things with them, but they can also vet things with him. And so you have a group of guys that are kind of serving as the voice of the team and as another resource. So instead of seeing sort of the captain as kind of the one leader or the one voice, we've kind of made that a bigger group of players, and we've got more guys who are being active and more guys who are being leaders. And then clearly that trickles down to the players themselves, where this idea of leadership is even bigger than just the leadership council or just the captain. And so I think we're trying to create that environment where everybody kind of sees himself as a leader, and that there's different ways for guys to be involved as leaders. And so when it comes down to having a game day captain, that person is going to be the captain, for that particular match. And then again, moving forward, we might get to a point where, whether it's a World Cup or whether it's a tournament where maybe you have a designated captain. But at this point right now with the team, it's been super effective for us to kind of operate with this leadership council and just kind of have captains that seem right for the moment.
Yeah. So with the leadership council, you've worked with other professional teams. Have they had that same thing? Because I worked on the Cal football team, and I'm pretty certain that they do the same thing with the leadership council as well.
I think it's probably more common amongst American football teams because you have such a huge team, right? You've got offense, defense, special teams. Heck, they have like 20 coaches alone, right? So you have these giant teams. So I definitely think it makes sense. I think the concept of a leadership council is super effective, because one of the things that you want to do is, you want representation. You want there to be a wide, diverse level of representation amongst your team, where it's not just one guy who is the voice of many. And so as diverse and as large as you can make that group, so that different players feel like that their perspective is represented. I think it's a model that's really worth looking into.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you could share, like, who's on the leadership council for the US team?
I probably shouldn't share specifically publicly,
Yeah.
like who those different guys
I mean, we
are.
could probably guess,
on
like
the
who's the
leadership
captain,
team.
right? Yeah.
You guys can start guessing, and I'll wink if
Yeah.
if that's one of them. But no, I'm sure, based on guys that you've seen that have been chosen for captains for
Yeah.
different matches, you can kind of deduce who some of those captains are. But we also want to make sure that the guys are represented that just aren't kind of quote unquote the captains of the group. And so we want to have that that pool be as diverse as possible.
Mhm.
Can you talk about what goes into like a game day decision to name a captain, considering there has been a lot of changes and there is a pool of guys? Is it kind of just like whoever the coach or the coaching staff sees fit for that game, or is there just kind of like, oh, Stefan did it last game, so Christian's going to do it this game? Like, is there any? So I'm sure there is a method to it, but can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's thought and there's discussion put into who's going to be that captain, from game to game, from situation to situation. It's not about, it's not this everyone gets a trophy mentality, right? It's not that, but it really is, again, looking at that from a game by game situation. And obviously Greg has a system and a method for everything. And it's involving people in the conversation, but Greg usually has a good grasp on who that captain's going to be.
Mm-hmm. How much of your role is performance coaching?
How much of a role is performance coaching?
Like are you doing a lot of like one-on-one sessions with guys, or?
Yeah, so I'm available. So the guys know that I'm available for one-on-one sessions. Plenty of guys take advantage of that, and others not so much. And again, it's always comes down to a personal choice. And then depending on the camp, it's kind of different from camp to camp, depending on how busy the schedule is and things like that, how many games we have packed in. We're also super respectful to want to make sure that these guys have personal time to themselves as well. So we're not wanting to over inundate them with lots of meetings and lots of different things. And so we try to be respectful of their times. And so from camp to camp, it'll kind of differ, maybe how many quote unquote leadership sessions that I have with the guys. And we also try to find ways to again, incorporate the ideas, incorporate the language, incorporate some of these principles into training and into other parts of the camp, where it's not just like, well, this is the leadership session now. We want those ideas to be kind of an organic and natural part of the entire sort of camp experience for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another thing too, I was gonna ask in a similar area is, because obviously, like, you're not at the camps. Your main team isn't the U.S. national team. You have your club teams. How do you keep that like brotherhood? Just when they're not in camp, like, is there anything they're doing outside of it? Like, is there a really big group chat or anything like that?
Yeah. Actually, yeah, there is a big group chat. Obviously, a lot of these guys have played together with each other, against each other so much from the youth teams up until now. And so there's already a lot of strong connections amongst the group. And so the guys, I think, do a really good job of staying connected. Obviously on Instagram, you'll see, some of, Tyler and Weston's epic video game trash talking with one another. And so you have those components. But I also give just like, again, a ton of credit to Greg and the technical coaching staff, because they do a fantastic job just staying really connected with the players in between camps.
Yeah, I saw Greg and Christian were at Austin FC's home opener last weekend or something.
Yeah.
I think it was last weekend.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And so again, in the spirit of wanting to support these guys as much as possible, the technical staff coaches do a fantastic job staying connected with these guys, throughout their club seasons, and just being a resource for them, and helping as much as they can. But the guys do, some of them are, we have the big group chats and stuff like that, but they do a good job of staying connected in creative ways on their own.
So going back to the group chat, who runs the most banter within the big team group chat? Is there somebody that's always like cracking jokes in there and like running the group chat, and is like every time you see a notification, it's this guy's name?
The group chat it was much more active during COVID, when everyone was on shutdown and things like that. And so we had some fun different, trivia contests and riddle contests and things like that we were doing in the group chat. I will tell you that definitely kind of the trivia riddle champion of that group is Matt Turner from New England.
Okay.
He's definitely the Riddler when it comes to dominating those competitions.
That's funny. I feel like Weston McKinney would be a pretty active banterer in the group chat.
Yeah.
You're probably not wrong.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, you're a professional improv comedian, and when I was looking at your website, you have I forget if it's like your motto or whatever: live, yes, and.
Correct.
Could you tell us a little bit more about that? Like, what does that mean? How are you applying that now?
Yeah. So, I grew up playing sports. I played soccer in college. Soccer was my first passion, but, I graduated from college. I got married, started working in the business world. My wife and I moved to Boston, and one of the first weekends there, an improv theater had just opened in Boston. And I went to a show, and I was just like, holy cow, like that was amazing. Like, how do they do that? Like, I want to know how they do that. What's the skill set that allows you to collaborate and just be that funny and that creative? And so I called, and they had a training center. I signed up for like a level 1 in the training center, and I was like hooked. Like day one, I'm like, this is amazing. I went through all 6 levels of the training center. It took about a year and a half, and, kind of timing is everything. And I happened to be there when they were expanding and they were auditioning for another cast. So I auditioned and I made that cast. And then over the span of the next couple of years, I kept working my way up to the next cast, and then the next cast, and then finally the main stage cast, kind of like, the first team. Right. And so I was kind of like working as a normal corporate guy during the day. And then at night I was performing probably 3 or 4 nights a week, in the theater and in front of, big audiences, and having a blast doing it. But it was early on, as I was learning kind of the principles of improvisation, I just, like, light bulbs were going off left and right. I'm like, there's so much to improv that translates to the real world, that translates to the corporate world, to relationships. And then me being a sports guy, there was these huge, transferable skills to athletes and sports and performance and great teams. And so as I kind of progressed in improv over the years, I kind of knew that I wanted to do more with it outside of, just performing on stage. And so mid 2000s, when I kind of went through a big career change and asked myself, what do I really want to do with my life? Well, I knew I wanted to do coaching, and I wanted to do speaking, and I wanted to get involved, around kind of performance coaching and personal development and that kind of thing. I wanted to use improvisation as a tool to talk about performance, and as a tool to talk about, team dynamics and culture. And so that's really the path I've been on for the last 15, 16 years, working in the corporate world, working in education. I was at IMG Academy for 3 years as a leadership coach, obviously one of the top sports complexes in the world. And that's where I started working with athletes on a day-to-day basis. Did that for 3 years. And then, 6 years ago, I left to kind of go on my own and do my own thing. And when it came down to A, writing a book, and B, kind of branding myself, like, who am I and what am I about, sort of in this performance coaching consultants space, it needed to capture what improv was all about. And it hit me one day. I was like, oh no, it's live, yes, and. Because yes, and is the basis of improvisation. All improvisation is based on yes, and. And so I'm like, well, what have I been doing for the last 15 years? I've been living this mantra of yes, and. So that's what I'm teaching. I'm helping people, quote unquote, live yes, and. And so what yes, and means to an improviser And so for Chuck and Will, so Chuck, I'll grab you. So Chuck, you and I
Sure.
we're gonna tell a story, all right?
Yeah, sounds good.
Sorry. So you and I, we're gonna pretend that we've got big weekend plans. And so I'll make the first statement, and then before you respond to it, you're going to say yes, and you're going to build off of whatever I said. And then I'm going to say yes, and build off of whatever you said. And we'll just go back and forth. It'll probably go crazy, but
Sure.
that's okay. All right.
Yeah.
So we've got weekend plans. So I'll start. Chuck, man, I am so excited about our plans this weekend.
Yeah, Travis, I am too. It's going to be a blast. I'm really excited to go to the beach.
Yes. And I can't believe that you got the Sports Illustrated swimsuit models to come to the party.
Yes, and I cannot believe that we will be flying out there on a private jet. It's going to be incredible.
Yes, and your brother just got his pilot's license, and he's going to fly the plane.
Yes, and my entire family's going to come out too. I haven't seen them in a while. It's going to be a blast.
Yes, and all of the models from SI are going to sing happy birthday to your dad on his birthday.
Yes, and we're going to go out. We're going to fly from the beach back out to Colorado and do some hiking afterwards.
Yes, and I heard your mother is like a world-class climber. She's gonna teach us, like how to like scale to the top.
Yeah, and because she's actually training to climb to the top of Mount Everest next month, so it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I heard she's gonna do some free climbing with Alex Honnold.
And because she's gonna climb up El Capitan without any ropes or anything.
Yes, perfect, good. We'll end it right there, Chuck. so good job. All right, so Chuck, man, you know how to improvise now.
Yeah, it's fun. That's fun. One of the questions I was going to actually ask you is if we could do an improv exercise. So I'm glad.
Well, there you go. So improv is yes and. So when improvisers go on stage, there's a mutual understanding that no matter what I say, Chuck, you're going to say yes and to it, and no matter what you say, I'm going to say yes and to it.
Yeah.
So there's no arguing. There's conflict. We can create conflict, but there's no arguing over what the facts are. Right? The facts are whatever we make them because we're making them up on the spot. So everything is yes and so as your partner, I have total trust, respect, and safety that no matter what I say, you've got my back.
Yeah.
Right? And vice versa. And so there's a mantra we use in improvisation that every time I step on stage, my goal is to make my partner look brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what my partner's goal is?
Make you look brilliant.
Make me look brilliant, right?
Yeah.
So we go on stage. So I'm thinking about you and your needs. You're thinking about me and my needs. So I'm making you look good. You're making me look good. We both look good together, right? So who wouldn't want to be teammates with a guy on the soccer team who is on the field trying to make them look good? Oh, I know where Chuck likes the ball, man. I know he likes it on his right foot on the top of the 18. So, and I know that he likes to press. And so I'm going to slide in and have his back as he presses. So as we kind of take this idea of making each other look good and we bring that to the sports world, it totally makes sense, right? And then if we think about sports through the lens of yes and, right? What is every soccer match? Every soccer match is a giant yes and. Once that ball starts, everything that happens after that is yes and, yes and, yes and, right? Oh, the referee is garbage. Yes and we need to adjust how we play. Oh, we just gave up a goal to Mexico in the first minute of the game. Yes and, right? We need to tighten things up. We need to adjust. Zach Steffen just got a knee injury. Yes and Ethan Horvath is going to go in and hold down the goal. Yes and, yes and, yes and. So what does yes and mean? Yes is acceptance of what is happening, or as I say, acceptance with reality, right? So you got to say yes to it, right? The quicker you say, you cannot progress until you say yes. So yes is acceptance. What is and? And is your response. How am I going to respond to what is happening? So when you have a yes and mindset, you're constantly responding proactively to the current moment. You're not making excuses. You're not being a victim. You're not getting stuck, or this referee sucks, and I can't believe we're playing like this, and I can't believe it's so hot, and I can't believe that, right. And it's like, yeah, it's hot. And yes and, yes and, yes and. And so it's this total mindset for how we deal with, we don't have to like what is happening to us, but you have to accept what is happening to us, and you get to choose your response. I always get to choose my response. I never get to choose what happens to me, and I always get to choose how I respond to it.
Yeah,
So
that reminds.
mantra.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like a lot of professional, like in like ultra competitive athletes, do have that mindset. Like for example, Tom Brady. It's like, I think it's an Instagram video I've watched of his. At the end, in it, he just says like, "I don't care how we win, or I don't care how we get it done, just win."
Yeah.
So it's the same thing, right? It's saying yes, and
it's you're always in a mindset of problem solving. It's ours. What do we, and what do we need to do now, right? I don't know, maybe you guys have heard the acronym before, but like WIN, right? Win, or what's important now, right? Not what's important then, or not what's important when, but like what's important right now, man. We just gave up a goal. WIN, what's important now, man. We need to shore up our back line, or we need to be more aggressive, or we need to get on the front foot. But it's what's important now. It's not about controlling the past or controlling the future. It's about always bringing yourself back to the present moment and dealing with the reality that's happening right now.
That's amazing. I have a super random sidebar here, but you said your favorite show was The Office.
Yeah.
Is that because Michael Scott would go to improv class?
This is the second time I've talked about this today. That episode of him taking improv class is so classic, because if anyone has taken an improv class, there is a Michael Scott in every class. The reason
they're like, yeah, I got the FBI outside, or I got a gun. You can't say anything about it.
Yeah. So just so you guys know, so I went to the training center, right? And so what happens would be like, you would go from one level to the next level, and by the time you get to level 6, all level 6 is that you are preparing to put on an improv show for family and friends, right? And so the people that you're putting the show on with, most of them you've been with for 5 or 6 levels. And so you kind of know each other really well, and you have to come up with like a name for your group. Well, the name of our group was Gary's Pocket. We called ourselves Gary's Pocket. And the reason we called ourselves Gary's Pocket was because we had a member in our group whose name was Gary. He was the Michael Scott of the group. So no matter what scene he was in, whenever he needed something, it was in his pocket. Oh yeah, well, I have a puppy right here. Oh yeah, well, I've got a gun right here. Oh yeah. And so it was just like, it was exhausting, right? Like so we were Gary's Pocket, like just like Michael Scarn, he's going to find a way to pull a gun out in every improv scene. So there's a Michael Scott in every improv group. And that's why that they obviously that's a group of actors who are improvisers. So they nailed it.
Michael Scott's middle name's Gary too, so that's fitting. Michael Gary Scott.
Nice. I didn't know that.
I like it. I actually think of some of that show was improvised too. A lot of The Office, I think, was improv.
Yeah, I think they did a good job where they would film a scene based on the script, and then they would film it multiple times and let the guys riff. And there's some filmmakers and directors and stuff that shoot things that way, where they're like, okay, let's film it once based on how it's written, but then let's do it again and play with it and have some fun with it. If you guys watched The Wolf of Wall Street, right? Remember Matthew McConaughey's?
Oh, that was all improv, right?
Because that's what he does as an actor before big scenes to get himself pumped up. So they were getting ready to shoot that scene, and he's doing his chest bump, and Leonardo DiCaprio is like, dude, what were you doing before the scene? And he tells him, Leo's like, let's run it again. You do that. You do that at the dinner table. So they used it, and they kept it in. So yeah, there's awesome. It's always cool when you've got little moments like that.
Yeah. Did you see, well, speaking of like McConaughey and the Austin FC game, did you see he was there before and he was just banging on that drum? That's probably one of my favorite videos, in that green suit as well.
Big green suit. Fantastic. How awesome would it be to have him as like part owner of one of your teams, man?
Yeah. He's there. If he said a pregame speech, like they're for sure going to win. Like he'd fire me up like none other.
Yeah. And I know there's great videos of him talking to like UT football over the years. And I think there's footage on Instagram of him talking to the team the day the day before their game. So yeah, man, what a great owner to have as part of your team.
Yeah. With improv though, like obviously there's a lot of overlap with sports and that, but so you said you work a lot in corporate America as well.
Yeah.
What's the spillover there?
Yeah. And a lot of that is the same thing. It's performance is performance, right? Whether you're a striker, a goalkeeper, a CEO, a manager, a salesman, like at the end of the day, performance is performance. And so the same skills that go into performing as an athlete are the same skills that go into being effective in the corporate world, right? So like, what are your habits and routines for being a good athlete, for being a good player? And I would say, well, what are your habits and routines for being effective in the corporate world? So, when you get down to like focusing on habits and focusing on routines, but then from, how do you have a yes and mindset at work? Well, like, yeah, like just like you don't know what's going to happen in a match, you don't know what's going to happen from day to day in your field of expertise in the economy, et cetera, et cetera. You can anticipate what's going to happen, and you can prepare for what could happen, but it comes down to, people who perform the best at life are the ones who deal with, the uncertainty of life as it changes.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, that's an improv mindset, right? The improv mindset, you teach yourself how to say yes and to everything that's happening. Well, the same is true in a corporate environment. The same is true in your marriage, right? I've been married, 25 years come October. It's the same thing. You're always dealing with uncertain factors, and it's how well do you adapt to the situation. And then a big part of my corporate work too is on the team building side of things. How do you create environments that for people to thrive and perform at a high level? And a lot of that comes down to the amount of trust, respect, and value that exists amongst those teams, right? So there's this term called psychological safety. The highest performing teams in sports, in the corporate world, I would say probably your friendships, the highest performing teams are teams that have the highest levels of psychological safety. So what does that mean? Psychological safety is just like where there are high levels of trust, respect, and value, those teams tend to perform at a higher level because those people can be authentic, right? So think about the sports teams that you guys have played on. When you know that and it doesn't even mean that you guys are all like best friends, but when you know that you're playing with someone who respects you and they have your back and they go to battle for you and you're going to go to battle for them, and I can go take a risk on making this run or take a risk in trying to win this ball because win or lose, I know this guy has my back. Well, that's the same in the corporate world. So when you nurture an environment where people feel safe to be themselves, their performance is going to be high. But when you have environments where people are apprehensive or nervous or afraid to be themselves, it means they're going to hold back, right? Their performance is going to be withdrawn. It's going to be hesitant. And that's the last thing you want, right? In a high performing environment. And so I help sports teams, I help corporate teams identify what are some things that we can do to build that psychological safety.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you're a big sports guy. Did you watch The Last Dance at all? The Michael Jordan documentary?
I did. Yeah.
So how would you evaluate the Bulls? Like, would you say that was a psychologically safe team?
Yes and no, right? So I think if you look at it, and the documentary does a decent job kind of getting some of the pieces of it. If you've ever read Phil Jackson's book, 11 Rings, obviously Phil coached six of the Bulls championships, another 3 with the Lakers, and then he has or another 4 with the Lakers, and then 1 as a player, right? 11 rings. So he will tell you, or if you've read the Captain's Class by Sam Walker, I highly recommend that book.
Okay.
Which gets into some of the best teams ever were because of the captain that was in place and not the other factors. In the coach's class, he will tell you that before the Bulls won the championship, Jordan was the lone captain and they never won a championship. It wasn't until Phil Jackson made Bill Cartwright the co-captain and then they won the championships after. Now, granted, they were on this path of progression from year to year. They probably would have gotten there anyway. But what they described from a psychologically safe environment was that Jordan would just decimate his teammates, right? He would break their will, because like he was alpha male, and he would break their will. And some guys were able to step up and take it, and others weren't. When Bill Cartwright, who was a 7'1" intimidating beast of a man, he wasn't afraid of Jordan. He was older, and he wasn't afraid of Jordan. So what Cartwright did is Cartwright kind of became a protector for the other guys on the team. Jordan would go off and pull his alpha male stuff, and Cartwright would come stand up to Jordan, and he would also pick up the pieces, and he would pick up the guys that Jordan would kind of eviscerate, right? Yeah. And so you had this balance now in the locker room of the guy that was kind of protecting some of the other guys, right?
It's almost like a mini leadership council in a way, right?
It really is. And so I think what was Jordan's greatest strength was also his greatest weakness, right? And so people will say, well, yeah, like he won 6 championships, he's the greatest player ever. You can be successful, and it doesn't mean there still wasn't better ways that you could have gone about even being more effective as a leader. And I think, with Jordan, he needed someone to kind of be a co-pilot who could be there to care for the players. That wasn't his strength. Yeah. And I think if maybe there was more of that in him, he might have gotten even more out of some of these guys who maybe there would have been a little less fear around their performance. But clearly at that level, guys get to that level because they have to have ultimate confidence. But I think if I could make a case and say, like, if he had maybe spent more time sort of building the relationships on that side of the end compared to, trying to almost sort of kind of bully guys into performance. But it's hard to argue with his results, but I still think there's probably even better ways to do things.
Yeah, he definitely wasn't making many friends in that process. Like, I think one of my favorite, I don't know, but something I thought was really interesting was the whole Scotty Burrell thing about how he would just he hated that guy, but he knew he needed him to be tough to get him to perform. That's just the way he went about it, I think,
Right. That was his way of going about it. Right. And maybe there's a better way to go about it for Scotty Burrell's personality. Yeah. But Jordan wasn't wired to go about it that way. Right. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm a firm believer, right, from a leadership standpoint, is all of us have different personalities, and there's different personality types. A firm hand might be the perfect coaching technique for one player, and a gentle hand might be the perfect tactic for a different player. So to be an effective coach, are you able to kind of have a Swiss Army knife approach when it comes to getting the best out of different players and still maintaining the same standard?
Yeah.
And I think great coaches are able to do that.
Yeah, one of the I took a leadership class here at Cal, and it was like the one question that's posed was like, what is the best leadership style? And the answer was, there is no best. It depends, really. You have to be able to be good at not all of them, but most of them, because the people you'll be working with will respond to one, or might be good to be a certain type of leader here, but in another instance different there.
Yeah.
With the U.S. national team, though, do you guys do any the Myers-Briggs personality type test or anything like that?
Not per se. We haven't per se as of yet. But again, it's one of those things that's, not to say we couldn't do something like that in the future. I have a general knowledge of Myers-Briggs. I've also done a deep dive into the Enneagram. If you guys have ever heard of the Enneagram. I've done courses in the Enneagram and things like that. So it's definitely an area that I have interest in, because I think there's a ton of value in it. But it's not a tool that we've brought, at least in this current regime. We haven't brought that to the group yet.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I know. I mean, I feel like it's kind of like I don't know, because it's kind of just limits the way you can classify people, because everybody's so different,
Yeah. You can use it as a tool that sort of puts people into boxes, which I would say is not a great use of it. I would say those tools are great where it gives you a way to better understand how people maybe think and how they process information, or how they process communication styles and things like that. I think if you use it as a resource, it's powerful. If you use it as a way to pigeonhole people into certain boxes, then I think it becomes kind of a limiting tool.
Yeah. So I got one last question before we wrap it up, or if Will has any more. I saw, I mentioned I saw how I like discovered you was through Sebastian's Instagram story.
Yeah.
And I was looking on your Instagram story too, and afterwards you had a selfie with Christian. What was like kind of the first thing you said to him after that win? Like I'm talking about like the Nations League win.
Yeah. Oh man, what was the first thing? Probably just a lot of screaming. a lot of on the field screaming and hugging, and like a lot of guys looking at each other going like, that was crazy, right? It was crazy. So just a lot of unbridled joy. And Christian's definitely a guy that, when I was at IMG, he was part of the U17 residency program. So he and Weston and Tyler,
you've known them for a while. Yeah.
So to say that I was really close with them, that would be an overstatement. I'd worked with them before, and so at least I had some relationship with them. And so it's been nice, obviously, to work with Christian, the last year and a half, and get to know him more, and just to see what an awesome guy he is. And so, it's when we're together and we're being professionals, it's like I'm not gonna like take selfies and stuff with the guys. But once you've won a trophy and you're on the field, the no selfie rule is kind of out the window. And no, it was just great to give him a hug and just kind of soak in just what an amazing game that was. The emotion on the field after the game, the roller coaster of emotions, throughout the game. Was just awesome. And to see Christian, convert that penalty with such confidence and poise and grace, was just awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome moment for him, and awesome moment for the team.
Your mantra is at work. Yes, and like kind of how you mentioned that, go down 1-0. How do we react from here?
Yeah. And again, it's that's, we're really intentional, right, about the mindset that, and all these guys, right, they don't get to where they've gotten in life without having, a rock solid mental mindset. And so we're not reinventing the wheel from a mindset perspective. We just want to be really intentional about it, right? We want to talk through how are we going to handle, adversity, not if it comes, but when it comes. And so we want to talk through as a team what our character is going to look like and what our mindset is going to look like. And so it's just a way of we're not teaching resilience as much as we are just trying to reinforce it. And obviously at this level, it's just, we know, and as we go into a World Cup qualifying cycle, it's only going to get, more difficult, and to be ready and prepared for the difficulties as they come, and how quickly we can respond to it.
So Christian wearing that armband, give him that little bit extra confidence to bury that penalty.
Hey, you know what? There's probably something to that. Because he definitely stepped up and carried himself, as a captain in that match. So yeah.
And my final question before we go is, did you get a medal from Nations League?
Not on the night of, but extra medals are on the way, is what I've been told.
Nice, congrats.
Yeah. So for the rest of the, there was a lot of staff that couldn't go up on the stage for numbers and things like that, but extra medals are on the way.
Awesome.
All right, Travis, thanks a lot for joining us. We enjoyed the conversation, learning more about it, learning about Live Yes and just your role with the national team.
Oh,
so thanks.
You want to plug your book?
Oh, sure, man. Why not? My book is on Amazon. It's called 3 Words for Getting Unstuck. You guys know those 3 words. It's live, yes, and so it's a little autobiographical, just to kind of talk. It's a little bit about sort of kind of my journey my journey by living yes and my professional life and my personal life are very much kind of living yes and then I definitely get into how this applies to your personal life and how it applies in the sports world as well. And so I think it's a good book. It's an easy read. It's why I got the job with the national team, because Greg read the book and he liked it, and so that was my entree to the team. And so people can get it on Amazon. As far as social media, I'm pretty much Twitter, Instagram, whatever, at Live Yes And. My website is liveyesand.com. I'm on Patreon at Live Yes And. I do 3 videos a week. So yeah, and anyone who's listening, I'm super available and accessible. So if you guys reach out, I'm guaranteed to respond. So awesome. I appreciate it, guys, man. This was a lot of fun. Keep doing your thing.
I actually read the little sample of your book on Amazon, and I think I'm gonna buy it because I
all right.
It, so
I'll hold you to
it was good. It was a nice, easy read. Yeah.
I'll get the notification if you buy it, Chuck. So I'll be waiting for that, waiting for that Amazon notification.
Yeah.
Nice.